Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be taking a first look at Gold Mythic Roxie, who I believe is going to be the next character in the RTS War Stores, the new War Season character. And visually we have had a Roxie before, but this Roxie looks quite a bit different, quite similar to quite a well-known Batman series character, but obviously looking really cool. I love the gun on the right hand side. You can see this kind of like pink rifle. You can see it in quite a bit more detail on the left hand side. Looking very happy with herself here is Roxie, and she is just giving you the big smile. She's got the ponytails. I think she pretty much visually looks like her previous version, which I think was a 6-star. I want to say is a 6-star, and who was also a tough character. So that's the thing they have in common. Got a lot of accessories going on. Headphones, you know, proper old school tape player as well. That's actually like an actual tape that you'd have to put in there rather than like a CD or anything like that. Proper old school. If we look at the upgrades here at level 1440 LB3, she has got 28,613 attack, 22,426 defense, and 26,293 HP. She is a tough character. She's a support role character as well, of course a Gold Mythic, and she's going to be joining the RTS Road to Survival Allegiance. Now do remember that RTS 2 and RTS Originals both got merged into Road to Survival. Okay, the first thing we're going to take a look at is going to be Roxie's Adrenaline Rush, and it is called Sight Up. It is a 66 AP cost rush. Make a critical attack against 2 enemies for 250% damage each. 2 random teammates get 50% attack for 2 turns. So obviously 2 parts of this. The damage part of this is going to work quite a lot like William's Adrenaline Rush, but instead of it being, you know, controlled to a line, it's going to be the enemy you select plus 1 extra random enemy, and it's going to be 250% crit, so that can obviously proc weapons, that can proc specialist skills, that can proc things potentially in Roxie's passives as well. 2 random teammates getting 50% attack for 2 turns is nice, as long as it always goes to teammates and not Roxie herself. If it goes to Roxie, it's only going to buff her for the next turn. If it's going to teammates, it could potentially go to your big damage dealer. 50% is okay. It's pretty much as high as you're going to get with most, you know, weapon buffs. There aren't too many attack buffs out there, honestly. I think there definitely should be more, so it is nice to see another attack buff coming in, especially on what seems to be a more attack-based character. Okay, so we have got the Adrenaline Rush up of Roxie here. The first person you select, it will always hit, and then the second character will be completely random. I'm going to select Molly as the first hit. We're going to do the Adrenaline Rush as it comes in, and the second hit comes in on a different character. That's pretty much as simple as it happens, and then it's a guaranteed critical attack. There are certain things that are going to happen because Roxie hits crits, as you can probably see on the character is left alive. And that's pretty much as simple as it works. As you see, the attack buff did go to 2 teammates. It went to Clementine and it went to Glenn. Obviously, if, like, let's say Glenn was one of your top tier damage dealers on your team, they're going to do significantly more damage. And that means you're generally going to want to rush with Roxie before you rush with your top tier damage dealer, just so that your top tier damage dealer will get a bit of an attack bonus. And it is quite nice to see this on a tough character, especially just because tough characters and tough teams are kind of like the weakest offensively because they don't have any weapon buffs, they don't have any character that gives them any offensive buff because the one in Challenge Run was a defensive one, so they don't have any sort of like offensive capability to boost damage, which is really odd. They're at this point with an attack team, so that, you know, we need these sort of support characters to come out. If we look at the upgrades here, you can see at grade 3 it gets +1 attack target. So initially it is only going to be able to hit 1, but you only need 1 copy to get this up to 2. And then at grade 5, which would require 2 copies, we'll get an upgrade where 2 random teammates get 50% attack for 1 turn. And I'd say that obviously that's pretty decent. You know, at grade 5, that means you're going to have to, you know, time Roxie's rush pretty well because it is only going to last 1 turn. But once you get 4 copies, you will have that +1 to actual duration. So you don't necessarily have to do it on the turn that your teammates need to rush. But even if they are going to rush that turn, you can get it for a bonus on the next turn as well for like a signature move or something like that as well, which can be very beneficial with certain specialists, you know, characters that, you know, get follow-up and stuff like that, have more chance to get that to actually happen. So I like this rush quite a lot in terms of what it brings to the table. A little bit of damage, but more of a support role, actual rush, in my opinion. She's, you know, bringing what I kind of feel is required for attack teams at the moment. Now, Roxie, of course, has a signature move, and it is called Shield Shock. It has got an initial cooldown of turn 1, cooldown of 2 turns, number of uses unlimited. 4 other teammates get 100% stun resistance for 2 turns, make a critical attack against an enemy for 250% damage. Now, the first one is obviously great because it's turn 1. You can do this on turn 1, and it's going to stop your teammates from getting controlled by lots of different things. Weapons, passives, anything that is stun based. This is really powerful for an attack team. It doesn't, however, protect Roxie from being stunned, but she has got other parts of her kit that are going to stop her from being stunned when she attacks. Now, she can potentially be stunned by someone who uses, let's say, a signature move and, you know, has a stunning signature move like Circuit, because obviously her specialist skill does not protect her against that, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. The second part is just a guaranteed critical attack against an enemy. Again, this can proc her specialist skill, this can proc certain passives potentially, this can proc potential weapons. I think there is a weapon out there where when you hit a critical attack on tough characters, you impair a line. So, you know, there's quite a lot of synergy with Roxie with certain, you know, items like that. Now, there is, of course, going to be less chance of her to hit a crit against what is considered probably the meta team with Rick lead. Because she's not a control-based character, she's not going to be able to lower those resistances. So she is going to be, you know, getting resisted quite a lot when it comes to crit attacks. So here we are off of turn 1. I can select an enemy again, and I'm going to select Garrett this time. We're going to do some trait damage. We're going to do a signature move. And you can see certain things have happened because I've hit the crit. We're going to do reasonable damage, but also the 100% stun resistance is going to come on all 4 of my teammates. If I had a 4th teammate, it would come in on the 4th teammate. You can see the 100% stun resistance. This does mean, obviously, if I was to attack stun on defense weapons, there'd be no chance of proccing those, unless I think the character might actually have it. If they're a control-based character, it might mean they reduce the resistance down to 60%. I'm not sure if that actually works with weapons. I would assume it actually does. It definitely would with passives, and it definitely would with you know, signature moves and rushes and stuff like that. But you know, 100% stun resistance, it does mean you can basically decide, hey, this team doesn't need stun resistance now. I've got Roxie, and you can go for something like taunt resist. It does obviously make your team a little less susceptible to being controlled, so it is actually pretty powerful for sure. So go straight into the upgrades on this signature move, and you can see at grade 2 it gets -1 to cooldown, so it goes from a 3-turn cooldown down to a 2-turn cooldown. At grade 4, it gets an upgrade where 2 other teammates get 100% stun resistance for 2 turns. Then you'll need 3 copies total at LB1 to get that pushed up to 4 other teammates get the stun resistance for 2 turns. And then lastly, at LB3, you'll get the -1 starting cooldown, where you can do this off of turn 1. I'd say that is actually quite important to try and get this off as early as possible. You know, you want that first turn signature move to come out, and get the stun resistance in. The damage is nice. The potential of actually doing things with the crit is obviously nice. Weapon, specialist skill passive, as you know. But like I said, there is chances for this to be resisted against what is considered like the meta team, especially the meta team that is alert, where Roxie would probably be used against more often than not. But she could be used against any team, realistically. She could be used against, you know, the strong teams out there that have like PAM leads as well. Less chance of being resisted in those cases. But the tanks will always be a problem, so be aware of that. Now, I don't mind this signature move at all. I think it's actually pretty good. It's going to be more supportive, but it does obviously increase the chance that your damage dealers are going to be able to attack multiple times in a row, because, you know, they're not going to get stunned for 2 turns, which is honestly really, really powerful. You know, being able to stop that potential is really important, and there's not many ways around stun. You know, it isn't like Confuse, it isn't like Taunt. You know, Focus isn't going to get you through that. You're just stunned. So unless you have a cleanse, which there aren't really many of, you kind of would rely on this sort of thing. You'd rely on your mods, which is generally like 60, 75%. But now you're getting 100% stun resistance. And I just think it's really cool, like I say, because you can switch out that particular slot, and generally speaking, attack team characters only will use 1 resist. You can switch it for something else, and you can just be a little bit more formidable on attack teams. And and build a team that is primarily going to come up and counter another team, which is what really you should be doing with attack teams, is building a counter team rather than having like a one team beats all situation, which is probably what a lot of people have right now. Now, Roxie, of course, has some mythic abilities. These are her passives. She has got Cunning, so she has 30% less chance to trigger enemy weapon effects and so on and so forth, but that obviously will be bypassed by her specialist skill when she attacks. But she'll have this when she gets attacked. Her specialist skill doesn't work on walkers, but this does work on walkers. But if she was to somehow get normalized, then her passive would take over. I would have preferred that she was a control passive character, just because, you know, it would have made much more sense. She's crit reliant, and crit is a massive issue, and that is kind of a shame, especially considering how important her specialist skill is to hit crits. Next up is going to be Armor Strip. When performing the disarming specialist skill, the target gets minus 30% defense for 2 turns. This is obviously really nice. You're going to amplify the damage on a particular character. Defense teams generally have a lot of HP, but okay-ish defense. If you can obviously reduce that even by 30%, even if it's like 60k going down to 40k, that is going to make a significant difference on the amount of damage output you're actually going to bring to the table. Next one is Grand Theft. When performing a critical hit, 100% chance to steal up to 2 positive effects from the target. So she has almost like an inbuilt ransack on a tough character. This is actually massive because there are a lot of characters out there, you know, giving themselves buffs like Halo, actual decap resistance, that sort of thing. And she's going to be able to steal these away. Not just because it's good for Roxie to get these on her, but it's actually really good to just get them off the defense team characters. And that's primarily what, you know, Ransack is all about. Lastly, she has a passive called Mow Down. This character gets 50% attack against disarmed enemies. So if she has already disarmed an enemy in, you know, the build-up, and she uses her Adrenaline Rush, it's going to amplify the damage attacks on that Adrenaline Rush if you actually use it on a disarmed enemy, which is obviously nice. She isn't really a damage dealer, so she isn't going to be getting any boost from, like, you know, agility or anything. But this is effectively kind of like an extra combat mod, you know, where you get attack versus a certain trait. She's getting attack versus someone who's disarmed, and it would stack with mods, and it would stack with trait damage. So if they're an alert character, they're going to be in even more trouble. And because she cannot proc weapons, this is going to be very beneficial for sure. Okay, so if we just show you how some of these passives work, if I used the signature move on Alice up the top, we'll see she is disarmed. She gets that defense down because of it as well. Now, if we just get some AP and we do the Adrenaline Rush, we're going to use it on Alice here. The bonus about this is the fact that she's going to do more damage because the character's got defense down, but she's also going to be doing more damage because they've got disarm. So it should be reasonably high amounts of damage compared to what we had before. I think before we hit her for 18,000, and there, because of the double down on the, you know, the different extras, the defense down and the attack up, we hit her for 42k. Massive amplification potential. Obviously, with weapons like 1535 surrounded by, you know, and potentially buffs coming in, she is going to actually get the boost. And I did actually just notice she can get the 50% attack buff, as you can see here. That would stack with her passive bonuses, because her passive bonuses are like intrinsic within her kit, like kind of like combat mods would be. The 50% buff is, you know, outside of that. So it's only going to buff her for the next turn, because if I hit defend, it's effectively only buffing her for just this turn, where it's a 1 turn. And she would effectively be able to use like a, you know, signature move potentially in this turn if I didn't command her the turn before. So that's a little downside on the Adrenaline Rush, honestly, but the damage amplification that Roxie's getting off of her passives is nice, but she's also doing a lot of damage amplification for teammates too because of the defense down. If we look at the upgrades here, we can see when performing the Disarm Specialist skill, the target is minus 15% defense at grade 1, and then Cunning 1 at grade 2, which is 50% less likely. And then we get the second half of Armor Strip, making it 30% defense down for 2 turns. Then we move on to the other upgrades. At grade 4, we can see Grand Theft Part 1 comes in, and it has a 50% chance to steal 2 positive effects from the target. At grade 5, the first half of Mow Down comes in, and this is where she'll get a 20% attack boost against disarmed targets. If we move on to the Limit Break upgrades, you can see at LB1, she'll have a 15% extra chance, making it 30% less likely to trigger enemy weapon effects. And then at LB2, she'll get the second half of Grand Theft, which is going to be quite important to make it a 100% chance to be able to ransack, 2 effects, steal up to 2 effects. And at LB3, she'll get the second half of Mow Down, where this character will get 30% extra damage, making it 50% total extra damage against a disarmed enemy. I actually like Roxie's passives quite a lot. It does boost her teammates, and it also boosts her individually. It seems pretty balanced. Majority of, the support stuff is coming out in her rush, in her signature move, and her specialist skill, but she's getting a little bit that is going to boost Roxie in her own passives. This does pretty much mean it doesn't matter what attack versus mod you go for, just because if someone is disarmed, you effectively will have attack versus them every single time, which is really actually kind of cool. Now, of course, Roxie has a specialist skill, and it is Disarm. I think Disarm is massively underused, especially considering we have so many 60% weapons, so it is really nice to see this come out, especially on a character that's going to be a bit more accessible in the War Store. That's going to be very important. It is a little bit of a downside because, the main team right now that is effective, that you have to disarm, is going to have crit resistance, and because Roxie is not a control character, she's got a lot of chance not to actually hit crits there, like it's a 50-50 gamble. But at least there's a disarm. At least there's more of like a more relevant disarm that's come out. All the disarms that we had before are either like kind of like not team-based disarms or quite old. Like Wayland is probably the best, but I've tried to use him recently and he's just not really it. He's not really doing enough in his kit, and Roxie honestly looks like she is. And considering she can potentially bring that ransack to the table too, on the passives, she's almost like Wayland 2.0 in that case, where she's given attack buffs though instead of a slight bit of AP on her rush. But if you didn't know how disarming works, basically Roxie cannot trigger any weapon effects when she attacks, even if the person's a control character. She isn't getting 100% resist, she just literally just cannot proc them at all. And she can also, when she hits a crit, disable third slot weapon effects. This can be ones that work offensively, like when it's like getting 30% extra attack when the character has a certain amount of HP. It will disable those, but also disable things like stun on defense, absolute defense, which is very, very powerful for sure. Especially considering, like I said, we have quite a lot of those 60% chance to proc weapons right now. Now, Roxie has an attached weapon, and it is a 4-star weapon, so it gives you a lot of room to upgrade this weapon. And it is Roxie's Savage Assault Rifle. It has got a 30% attack base, a huge bonus to AP when attacking, and then in a third slot it has a more like kind of unique special. I think this may be the same one that is on Titan's base weapon. Stun on attack. When attacking a target, this character has a 50% chance to stun that target for 1 turn. So obviously more chance to stun at 50%, but it's only going to last for 1 turn. There's no heal on this either, so you're not getting like the healing side of it on a healing stun. This is kind of nice if you do go for the attack, you miss the crit because it gets resisted, you could potentially stun the enemy, and if you didn't know, a stunned enemy is disarmed because their weapons won't proc when they're stunned. You can upgrade this to 45% attack on the 4-star weapon, make it a 5-star weapon, add a 1535, and then make it 55% attack. I think that's pretty much the way you should go on the upgrades. Pretty straightforward. Now, whether you want to use this weapon long term or not, you switch it out for something else. If you want to go for Rampage, she is getting a lot of crits, but realistically, I think she is more of a support character. You should be using her to set up and boost the damage of other characters, and 1535 makes a lot of sense on that kind of build. So this weapon's pretty nice, and it obviously looks really cool too. So that's Gold Mythic Roxie, and like I said, she is going to be a character to be in the War Store, the next season's War Store, so it's going to be a little bit more accessible in terms of getting your hands on this disarm. I think it's going to be quite important. She's probably one of the best characters to go in the War Store, especially when it, if you consider the meta right now, how many 60% weapons are rolling around, how useful she's going to be as a support character, the fact that everything's defensive right now and we need more attack characters. This is kind of an answer to a lot of questions. We need maybe a couple more answers, but this one is definitely a good one, and I could see this character being used by quite a lot of people for sure. But do tell me what you think about Roxie when it comes to the visuals, her kit. What would you have maybe changed? Let me know in the comments down below. That is the end of my video. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.